This is the story of my grandfather, Harihar Mathur. My name is Siddhartha. I called him Nana, and he's been an inspirational figure to almost everybody who knew him.
My name is Mahima. My father was born on November 17, 1927 in Amroha in the province of Uttar Pradesh. He and my mother met when they were both in their early 20s in Pune, across the country. My father was a young scientist in NCL. My mother's father, my grandfather, was an assistant director there. So my father, of course, when he saw my mother, pulled out all the stops. He was a sportsman and he played tennis. He was a tennis star, and so he invited her to watch him play. That's where the romance began. They were married in 1955. My brother Rakesh was born in 1956. I was born in 1957. And 9 years later, my sister was born.
And of course, as we all know, children grow up, get married, and have more children. So Rakesh, the eldest, got married to Deepti. Mahima married Amitabh. And Poonam married Aaron. And before you know it, you had myself, my younger brother Kabir, Ela, and Alia. My grandfather had many passions in life. The first to which he was most devoted was my grandmother and his children. First and foremost, my grandfather was an academic and a scholar. My grandfather was also a great teacher. As he was starting off his career, he was a scientist at the National Chemical Laboratory in Pune, where, of course, he met my grandmother. And after that, he moved to Bombay, to IIT, where he was a professor of chemistry. And then eventually he became a national emeritus scientist. And most recently, he published a book, Your Heart is in Your Hands, Guide to a Healthy Heart.
My father loved the outdoors. He loved to travel. For the 3 summers that we were in school in the US, the first day of our summer holidays, we were bunged into a car and we set off to see America. Finally, in 1968, my parents decided it was time to return back home to India. My father planned a detailed travel across Western Europe. We left the US and traveled through Western Europe for a month before arriving in Pune.
The travel, of course, indulged his other great passion, photography. He enjoyed taking photographs of landscapes, of monuments, of flowers, wildlife, and most of all, as you'll see in many of these pictures, my grandmother.
So the photos of the flowers came from gardens. Rakesh and Deepti's rose garden in Fremont, California. My rose garden in Moret in France. And then he enjoyed photographing in the orchid gardens in Singapore. He'd watch the buds, he'd wait till they flowered, he'd wait for the perfect light, and he'd wait for the perfect shot, and in some sense he could get the perfect picture, which he was ultimately after, because he had control of light, and flowers don't move that much. He loved the outdoors, so he chose places like the mountains. The mountains always fascinated him. He loved getting up in the morning and taking sunrise, photos of sunrise over the mountains in the Himalaya in India. He loved wildlife photography, so he made many a trip to tiger sanctuaries in Ranthambore and Kanha and took photographs of tigers, peacocks, elephants. And then when there was nothing else, there were flowers always.
I hope these vignettes give you some idea of who my grandfather was. He was all of these, and yet he was so much more. He was a man of honor, of integrity, fair. He lived a very full life, and he inspired great loyalty because he gave so fully of himself. He worked hard, he played hard, he was fun and wise. And he brought tremendous love and happiness to those close to him, and he will be missed.